I'm gonna miss you.
After Rob Reiner's passing, the heartbreak didn't end at the funeral, it quietly deepened. When the will was finally revealed, his children, Roy and Jake, were left in stunned disbelief. The $200 million fortune Rob and Michelle built over decades, the legacy of a lifetime, was gone. Not to the family, but entirely to charity. In that moment, grief turned into something sharper, the feeling of being erased from your own story. Shock quickly gave way to anger. Sources say Jake couldn't hold back, claiming their parents had chosen the world over their own children. Lawyers were called, and soon the quiet mourning became a tense legal showdown that captured the public's attention. Nearly 2 weeks after the tragedy on December 14, 2025, when Rob and Michelle Reiner were found lifeless in their Brentwood home, the family finally had a private farewell. Their remains were released after the Los Angeles coroner completed examinations, and by December 19, eldest son Jake was officially listed as the informant on their death certificates and received their ashes. Rob and Michelle were cremated at Mount Sinai Mortuary, a respected Jewish funeral home in the Hollywood Hills, known for honoring Jewish traditions and being a resting place for Hollywood legends. The family kept everything private at first. Romy and Jake handled it quietly, no media spectacle, no crowds.
We have our robbery homicide division handling the investigation. They worked throughout the night and were able to take into custody Nick Reiner. He was subsequently booked for murder.
Just a small circle of loved ones. In a poignant gesture, the ashes were brought to Jake's home, keeping their parents close during the darkest days. The family hadn't decided on a permanent resting place yet. Perhaps the ashes would be scattered in a meaningful location or placed in a family cemetery. But peace didn't last. Soon, cameras caught Romy and Jake entering a prominent Beverly Hills law firm, one often handling Hollywood inheritance disputes. Dark clothes, sunglasses, exhausted faces. The images went viral, fueling speculation about the $200 million inheritance. The public couldn't understand why the siblings were seeing lawyers so soon. Romy remained silent, her sorrow heavy, while Jake led the way, shielding her from the flashing cameras. Reporters shouted questions. Has the will been validated? Who will control the assets? Their grief clashed with the world's curiosity, a reminder that fame often magnifies heartbreak. Then the bombshell dropped. Rob's will revealed that nearly all of his $200 million fortune was designated for charitable foundations. Shocked at first, the siblings soon grappled with the meaning behind it. Rob wasn't rejecting them, he believed in independence. Wealth, he thought, could trap people, dull ambition, and stunt personal growth. For Nick, struggling with personal challenges, Rob thought facing the world without a financial safety net would teach responsibility. For Jake and Romy, he trusted they had already proven themselves, capable of building lives without inherited wealth. Rob often joked, "My kids can handle it, they're stronger than people think." His goal wasn't money, it was purpose. Romy was tasked with selling the Brentwood home and other properties, with proceeds going to charitable foundations that had long been close to Rob and Michelle's hearts, supporting education, healthcare, and social programs. Rob's guiding belief was clear. Parents don't live to pave the road for their children, they live to teach them how to walk on their own. Yet even noble intentions can cause pain. For Jake and Romy, realizing they wouldn't inherit a single dollar was crushing. Reports say their first private meeting with lawyers was emotional. Romy broke down. "This isn't fair." Jake was more fiery. They chose to care for the world but forgot about their own children. Their anger wasn't about charity, it was about being erased from their own family's story. Determined, they assembled top inheritance lawyers. Daniel Cross, famed for challenging unshakable wills, and Evelyn Hartman, an expert in charitable trusts, joined the fight. Jake reportedly said, "We're not afraid. We've already lost everything." The legal battle wasn't just about money.
The thought of being taken away from my sons like that, it's just so profoundly disturbing.
The whole film is improvised, and they're really
a spit polished older brother who looks like me but just does everything right. Yeah. And I have a sister who just went off to college.
Oh, okay.
And I never went to high school, never went to college, never did any of that stuff. I've done heroin, and I've done meth, and I've done everything under the sun.
It was about legacy, love, and understanding. Rob's principles, independence, accountability, self-reliance, had become the source of his children's rebellion. And while the world celebrated Rob as a symbol of compassion, his family quietly wrestled with heartbreak. Rob and Michelle's impact went far beyond wealth. They were Hollywood's socially conscious power couple. Their I Am Your Child Foundation reshaped early childhood education, reaching millions. They championed policy, change through parents' action for children, launched campaigns like Proposition 10 to fund health and education initiatives, and fought for marriage equality in California. Rob's films often carried powerful social messages, and Michelle ensured every campaign was strategic and heartfelt. Their philanthropy was hands-on, unselfish, and relentless. Rob's fortune wasn't inherited, it was earned. From acting in All in the Family to directing hits like When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, and Stand By Me, and co-founding Castle Rock Entertainment, he built an empire. Strategic real estate in Brentwood and Malibu added millions, as did royalties and smart investments. Michelle's financial guidance ensured stability and growth. Yet ironically, the empire they built became the epicenter of heartbreak after Rob's passing. When the will was revealed, the world saw generosity. His children felt distance. Did Rob's final act teach independence, or did it unintentionally wound those he loved most? Perhaps both. Rob Reiner's story reminds us that love, legacy, and loss can collide in ways no wealth or intention can fully reconcile. His life was about purpose, his fortune a tool to make a lasting difference. And yet, the personal cost was undeniable. But the story doesn't end with lawyers and legal battles. Behind closed doors, the Reiner siblings were navigating a storm far bigger than money. Losing both parents in an instant is one kind of grief, but feeling excluded from their legacy added a layer of pain that public headlines could never capture. Friends close to the family revealed that Romy and Jake often retreated into long, quiet conversations late at night. They revisited childhood memories, old letters, and shared anecdotes about their parents' values. Each memory was bittersweet, a reminder of love, guidance, and moments now frozen in time, paired with the sharp reality that they wouldn't inherit the tangible markers of that life. The homes, the investments, the fortune. Jake, who had built a stable career in his own right, admitted to friends that the legal fight wasn't just about reclaiming money, it was about reclaiming a sense of fairness and acknowledgement. "It's not greed," he said. "It's trying to understand why the people who loved us most didn't leave a part of themselves for us." Romy's silence, equally profound, often carried the weight of unresolved questions, hurt, and sorrow. The public, meanwhile, continued to speculate. Headlines painted a picture of a Hollywood inheritance drama: $200 million fortune, charitable donations, grieving heirs, and an emotional legal showdown. But very few understood the complexity behind it, how the philosophical choices of Rob Reiner collided with the raw, human need for connection and closure. To understand why Rob made the choices he did, you have to look at his life philosophy. He truly believed that giving too much could hinder growth. He saw life as the ultimate teacher, an unrelenting force that teaches independence, resilience, and responsibility. Rob and Michelle lived these principles themselves. Their work, their films, their advocacy, everything was aimed at shaping the world, not just themselves or their family. Even in death, Rob's influence was pervasive. By donating nearly all his fortune to charitable foundations, he ensured that his life's work would continue beyond him. Education programs, healthcare initiatives, social justice campaigns, causes that mattered to him and Michelle would receive ongoing support. This wasn't just money, it was a continuation of the Reiner legacy, a way for their values to live on in the real world. Yet for the children, it was a bitter pill. Sources close to the family say that legal strategy sessions often ended in exhaustion, tears, and moments of silence. Lawyers discussed clauses, trust structures, and potential legal loopholes, but the real battle wasn't in the courtroom, it was internal. Romy and Jake were wrestling with questions that had no easy answers. Could they honor their parents' intentions while also preserving their own sense of belonging? Was it possible to accept charity while feeling excluded from the family they had grown up in? Even Nick, the sibling who had struggled more publicly, felt the tension. Although he wasn't legally excluded, he too had to process his place in a family suddenly defined more by philanthropic decisions than personal bonds. For all three children, the Reiner family home, the Brentwood mansion, once a symbol of stability and love, had become both a reminder of what was lost and a tool for Rob's philanthropic mission. The home would be sold, and the proceeds directed to causes that Rob and Michelle championed. Despite the heartbreak, the Reiner siblings started to see glimmers of their parents' philosophy at work. Friends say Romy began reflecting on the idea that Rob had wanted them to forge their own paths, independent of inherited wealth. Jake, though still angry, recognized the courage in his parents' decisions, even if the timing felt cruel. Outside the Reiner family, the world continued to celebrate Rob and Michelle as models of generosity and activism. Documentaries, film retrospectives, and media coverage highlighted their impact. Millions of children reached through early education initiatives, laws changed for equality, communities transformed by philanthropy. Yet the private story, the story of children grappling with grief, love, and legacy, remained largely hidden. What makes this story so compelling is the tension between intention and reception. Rob Reiner's will was an act of ultimate generosity, yet it also became a source of heartbreak. His philosophy, that independence is the greatest inheritance a parent can give, clashed with the emotional reality of losing one's parents. It's a reminder that even the most thoughtful intentions can have unintended consequences when human emotions are involved. And this isn't just a Hollywood story. It's a story that resonates with anyone who has faced loss, struggled with family expectations, or tried to reconcile principles with feelings. Rob Reiner's life and legacy challenge us to think, what does it really mean to leave something behind? Is it the money, the houses, the material wealth? Or is it the values, lessons, and the paths we create for others to follow? The Reiner inheritance saga will continue to unfold in the coming months and years. Legal battles may be fought, public opinion may shift, but the deeper story, the story of love, grief, independence, and family, remains ongoing. And perhaps, one day, the siblings will find a way to reconcile their parents' philosophy with their own needs for closure and connection. For now, Rob and Michelle's legacy lives on, through the children they raised, the films they made, and the causes they championed. But their story is also a cautionary tale, that even the greatest acts of generosity can leave wounds that no money can heal. So, what do you think? Was Rob's final decision an act of ultimate love, or a heartbreaking misstep? Could his children have understood him while he was alive? Or was this a lesson that could only be learned too late? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because stories like this spark conversation, reflection, and even a little controversy. As the legal battle unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just about a will. It was about identity, memory, and the meaning of family. Rob and Michelle's children weren't fighting to claim wealth. They were grappling with a void where love, validation, and connection once resided. Friends described Jake and Romy as being trapped between admiration for their parents' vision and a profound sense of abandonment. Even the charitable foundations Rob chose became characters in this story. Organizations tied to education, healthcare, and social justice were now the stewards of the Reiner fortune. To outsiders, this was a noble act of philanthropy, a continuation of the couple's lifelong mission. But to Jake and Romy, it was a constant reminder that their parents had put the world before them at a moment when they felt most alone. Sources close to the family revealed how complicated emotions became when the siblings began questioning the timing and structure of the will. Did Rob truly consider how it would feel for his children? Or was this simply the culmination of a philosophy he held so tightly that it overshadowed human emotion? These questions haunted every meeting with lawyers, every consultation with family friends, and every late-night conversation between the siblings. Meanwhile, the media continued to cover the story with relentless curiosity. Paparazzi photographs of Romy and Jake walking into courtrooms, their expressions weary but resolute, were splashed across entertainment sites worldwide. Headlines focused on the $200 million fortune, the charitable donations, and the inheritance drama, but missed the private heartbreak, the internal struggle, and the lingering grief. Even as the public debated, the children were quietly collecting evidence. Personal journals, letters, and private reflections from Rob became central to their legal strategy, not because they sought money, but because they wanted to understand. They hoped to piece together a rationale, a thread of reasoning that might make the unthinkable feel just a little more human. For Jake, the process was intense and emotional. Sources say he spent hours poring over correspondence between his parents and various charitable organizations, trying to reconcile the man who taught him resilience with the man who had left him and his siblings materially empty-handed. Romy, creative and thoughtful, often reflected on her parents' teachings, on compassion, independence, and service, while trying to grapple with the raw reality of loss. But this story wasn't only about grief. It was also about legacy, one that extended far beyond the Reiner household. Rob and Michelle had spent decades shaping the world around them. Their foundations, nonprofits, and advocacy work didn't just leave money. They left systems, programs, and frameworks designed to improve lives long after they were gone. The I Am Your Child Foundation, for example, had forever changed early childhood education in America, inspiring countless parents to rethink how they nurtured their children. And yet, as impactful as their legacy was publicly, privately, it created tension. It forced their children to face an uncomfortable reality. Sometimes the best intentions in the world can leave loved ones feeling unseen. Rob's philosophy, that independence is the greatest inheritance, was noble, but it collided with the human need for security, validation, and closeness. The siblings' struggle also raised larger questions about family dynamics in high-profile households. How do children navigate love and loss when the parents are both icons and philanthropists? How do they process grief when the world expects them to admire the legacy, even while their hearts ache from personal exclusion? Romy and Jake's journey became a meditation on these questions, exposing the emotional complexity behind the headlines. Despite the pain, there were moments of clarity. Friends say that in private, Jake and Romy began to see pieces of their parents' vision come to life. They witnessed programs funded by the Reiner fortune, helping children, supporting families, and creating meaningful change. It didn't erase the grief, but it offered a nuanced understanding. Rob and Michelle's generosity wasn't cold or distant. It was a reflection of their life philosophy, a life dedicated to purpose beyond personal comfort. Yet, even as they started to reconcile with their parents' choices, the emotional weight remained heavy. Meetings with lawyers were tense, late-night reflections filled with unspoken questions, and every public photograph reminded them of both their loss and their parents' intentions. The Reiner inheritance story became a complex tapestry of love, grief, duty, and philosophy, one that challenged conventional ideas about what it means to leave a legacy. And as the months passed, the story continued to evolve. Legal filings, court hearings, and private negotiations all added layers of tension. But through it all, one thing became clear: Rob and Michelle's influence would persist, not in dollars or homes, but in ideas, values, and the lives they touched through decades of activism, advocacy, and storytelling. This saga reminds us of a difficult truth: generosity can coexist with heartbreak. Love can be expressed in grand gestures, yet still leave wounds. And the lessons parents hope to leave behind can be both inspiring and challenging, especially when life's timing is cruel. In the end, Rob Reiner's story, and the story of his family, teaches us that legacy is more than wealth. It's about influence, principles, and the lasting imprint of a life lived with purpose. And sometimes, the deepest lessons come wrapped in complexity, leaving us to grapple with love, grief, and understanding long after the headlines fade. So, what do you think, Forever Fame family? Was Rob Reiner's final act one of ultimate love, or did it unintentionally hurt the people who mattered most? Could his children have understood him while he was alive, or was this lesson destined to be learned too late? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this story is as much about family as it is about fame, fortune, and philosophy. As time passed, Jake and Romy began reflecting on the childhood they had shared with Rob and Michelle. Friends say the memories were both comforting and painful. They remembered family dinners filled with laughter, impromptu movie nights, and lessons that went beyond words, values Rob instilled in them through actions rather than gifts. One friend described a moment years ago when Rob had quietly told his children, "Life will test you, not to break you, but to see how strong you really are." At the time, it sounded like encouragement. Now, in the shadow of loss, the words carried a haunting weight. Rob had always believed that independence wasn't just a skill, it was the measure of a person's character. Romy, who had always been deeply creative, often found herself revisiting old journals she kept as a teenager. She read passages about family vacations, late-night conversations with her parents, and dreams she had shared with them. Each memory was a thread connecting her to a life that now existed only in the past. But as she reread these pages, she began to see the subtle lessons Rob had embedded in her everyday experiences. Every moment of encouragement, every challenge presented, every expectation of self-reliance, they were his way of teaching them to navigate life on their own. Jake's reflections took a different form. Practical and analytical, he pored over old business advice Rob had given him, from managing finances to understanding the entertainment industry. It struck him how much of his father's philosophy was already alive in his own choices. Yet, even with that understanding, the sting of being cut out of the financial legacy remained sharp. There was grief, yes, but also a simmering tension between gratitude and the desire for recognition. Behind the headlines, Rob and Michelle's legacy continued to grow in the world. Friends and associates described how their charitable initiatives touched countless lives, often in quiet, unseen ways. Children in underserved communities received access to early education programs. Healthcare initiatives funded by Rob and Michelle brought relief to struggling families, and advocacy campaigns reshaped laws to protect children and promote equality. The couple had built a world in which their impact was tangible, lasting, and deeply meaningful. Yet for Jake and Romy, the tangible absence of their inheritance turned every act of philanthropy into a reminder of what they had lost. It wasn't that they opposed charity, they understood the value of giving back. But the pain came from being excluded from the narrative, the family story, the tangible symbols of a life they had shared with their parents. And then there was Nick. The sibling who had faced more personal struggles than the others now had to navigate a complicated mix of grief, reflection, and public scrutiny. He had always been closer to his parents in some ways, more dependent in others, and the decisions Rob made regarding the inheritance forced him to confront his own identity within the family. Could he accept his parents' choices without resentment? Could he see the intention behind the act, even as it created emotional distance? Legal experts say cases like this are rare because they force families into moral and emotional territories courts aren't designed to navigate. Money, property, and legal documents can be disputed, but love, grief, and philosophical differences, those aren't easily settled. For the Reiners, the courtroom became less a place for resolving inheritance and more a space where unspoken family tensions, unresolved emotions, and personal identities were all put under the microscope. Meanwhile, the world continued to see Rob Reiner as a philanthropist, a legend, and a compassionate activist. Documentaries, retrospectives, and media coverage celebrated his life's work. But inside the family, the narrative was more nuanced, filled with love, pain, and the harsh realities of loss. Some close friends believed this conflict was inevitable. Rob and Michelle had always prioritized purpose over comfort, society over self, and principles over ease. To them, independence wasn't just an abstract ideal. It was a moral responsibility, a way to ensure their children were ready for life without relying on inheritance. But life has a way of complicating even the noblest intentions. Sources reveal that the siblings' reflections often led to late-night conversations about life, legacy, and meaning. They asked themselves, could they forgive their parents? Could they embrace the life lessons Rob had intended while mourning the material absence? Could love survive philosophical disagreement and emotional pain? Even as they wrestled with these questions, they also began seeing glimpses of clarity. Friends report moments where Jake and Romy would acknowledge the subtle truths in their parents' choices. They realized Rob had spent his life trying to prepare them for challenges they couldn't yet understand, teaching them resilience in a world that rarely offered comfort. Every foundation, every program, every philanthropic initiative became a reminder of their parents' commitment to values over wealth, a lesson in compassion and purpose. And yet, the emotional tension lingered. Grief and admiration were inseparable. Love and hurt were intertwined. The Reiner inheritance saga wasn't about greed. It was about processing the complex interplay between human emotion, family loyalty, and philosophical intention. Rob Reiner's story ultimately forces us to ask a question. What is true legacy? Is it wealth left behind? Or is it the principles, the impact, and the moral guidance that shapes lives long after someone is gone? For the Reiners, the answer is complicated. Rob and Michelle's legacy lives in millions of children, in social reforms, in the stories they told, and in the lives they transformed. But it also lives in the private heartbreak of a family, grappling with love, loss, and independence, in the aftermath of extraordinary generosity. As this story continues to unfold, one thing is clear: the Reiners' journey is far from over. The legal battle may have its resolution, but the emotional journey, the reflection, understanding, and reconciliation, will last a lifetime. And in that, there is a lesson for all of us. That love, purpose, and legacy are not always aligned with expectations, and that the greatest gifts may sometimes come wrapped in complexity and quiet struggle. As the months passed, Jake and Romy began slowly navigating a world forever changed. Court dates came and went, papers were filed, and lawyers debated clauses in the will. But no legal victory could fill the emotional void left by their parents' absence. Friends say the siblings often sat in quiet reflection, holding their parents' ashes, revisiting family photos, and trying to make sense of both their grief and the philosophical legacy Rob had left behind. The legal battle, intense as it was, became almost secondary to the emotional journey. Jake and Romy began to understand something profound. Rob Reiner's true gift wasn't the money, it was the lessons, values, and resilience he instilled in them. Every philanthropic act, every foundation, every charitable donation was an extension of his philosophy. The world is bigger than any one person, and true meaning comes from purpose, not wealth. Still, the pain was real. Losing a parent is never easy, and being cut out of a material legacy made it harder. The siblings faced a paradox. Their parents' generosity had created an undeniable impact on the world, but it also left them with a sense of exclusion from their own family history. Romy, once quietly creative, poured herself into her work and art, finding solace in projects that honored her parents' values. Jake, analytical and determined, channeled his grief into action, questioning, learning, and slowly understanding the wisdom behind Rob's decisions. Even Nick, often struggling in the past, began to see the bigger picture. Friends say he reflected on Rob and Michelle's lessons about resilience and responsibility, realizing that their choices, harsh as they seemed, were rooted in love and the hope that each child would grow stronger on their own. In many ways, the Reiner family story became a study in contrasts. Publicly, Rob and Michelle were celebrated as icons of generosity, compassion, and activism. Their films, foundations, and advocacy work touched millions. Privately, their children faced heartbreak, anger, and a struggle to reconcile love with loss. The intersection of public legacy and private grief revealed a truth that few could fully comprehend. The heart of a family doesn't always align neatly with legal documents or financial decisions. Sources close to the family say that, over time, Romy and Jake began to find moments of peace. They recognized that their parents' intentions were not about rejection, but about teaching them lessons that could only be learned through life itself. Independence, resilience, and responsibility were gifts that could not be measured in dollars. Slowly, the sharp edges of anger softened into understanding, though the grief remained a constant presence. Friends also noted that the siblings began exploring ways to honor their parents' philanthropic legacy. By participating in charitable work, supporting programs their parents had championed, and continuing the Reiners' commitment to social change, they found a form of connection. Proof that even in absence, Rob and Michelle's vision could continue to inspire and guide. And then there was the public. Headlines still flashed across screens, focusing on the legal battles and the $200 million fortune. But for those who looked closer, the story was far more nuanced. It was about family, love, grief, and the sometimes painful complexity of leaving a legacy. It was about understanding that the lessons parents leave behind are not always comfortable, but they are enduring. Rob and Michelle Reiner's story, in the end, reminds us of the delicate balance between intention and reception. True generosity doesn't always feel comforting to those closest to us. Love can be expressed in ways that challenge us, push us, and force us to grow. And sometimes, the greatest inheritance a parent can leave is not money, but the wisdom to navigate life with purpose, courage, and independence. For Jake, Romy, and Nick, that journey continues. Their parents' choices may have caused initial heartbreak, but over time, they began to see the quiet brilliance in the philosophy Rob and Michelle lived by. Their legacy, their films, foundations, advocacy, and lessons, continues to touch lives far beyond what money alone could ever achieve. Forever Fame Family, Rob and Michelle Reiner's story is a reminder that love, grief, and legacy are intertwined in ways that defy easy explanation. Even the most generous acts can create tension, and even the greatest intentions can leave wounds. But in the end, The enduring impact of a life well lived on family, community, and the world can transcend material inheritance. So, what do you think? Was Rob Reiner's final act the ultimate lesson in love and independence, or a heartbreaking misstep? Could his children have understood while he was alive, or was this something only time could reveal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because stories like this spark reflection, debate, and sometimes even a little healing. Thank you for following this story to the end. If you have thoughts on Rob Reiner's will or the delicate balance between love and legacy, share them in the comments. For more stories about powerful families, hidden truths, and legacies that echo long after the spotlight fades, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because some stories, even after the final page, never truly end.